They were a nice and giving family. They became rich and well-liked because they worked hard. No one thought the woman would suddenly vanish, leaving no clues behind. People believed she was taken by force, but nobody asked for a reward. But the truth is, what really occurred is even more terrible than you can think. When Frank became engaged to Amelia, he had a job as an assistant in a company that manufactured beer. He was in his second year of chemical engineering, and Amelia was learning how to prepare the best desserts in the world because she was studying pastry. The dedication and commitment that Frank put into his work were truly unique. Before long, he was already the plant manager. He was promoted the day he found out he was going to be a father for the first time. His heart was very happy, and it was also very grateful for the blessing he had to care for and protect the little boy. Frank longed for his son to have his mother's beautiful Chinese eyes, as this was always very appealing to him. Frank was extremely worried about the enormous responsibility that was coming. He even wanted to be able to give her everything they could not give him. With his career completed, he worked very hard not only to be the plant manager, but also to be the one who prepares the chemical values of said bottle and thus be able to exercise all that he had learned. Frank was literally almost never at home. The poor man worked a lot, and the overtime had him exhausted. When he got home, all he wanted to do was sleep. He played with Amelia's belly in his free time, but almost never touched her as a partner. Amelia was a little tired of the situation they were going through, but Frank promised her that it would only be for a short time until he got that promotion. Unfortunately, that promotion never came. The baby was born and was about to turn 3 years old. What Frank did was start his own beer company and compete with his former bosses because Frank felt that he could create a much more attractive and fine formula for the palate. That's how Frank accomplished that and became a very wealthy man. They moved to a new luxurious neighborhood and even bought a nice car, one of the nicest in the city. The truth is that Amelia was very happy for his achievements, but she and her son missed seeing their father sharing time with them from time to time. The promise of having more time for them became distant with the excuses Frank always had. One day, Amelia threatened Frank to leave with her son if he did not take them on vacation. Frank, feeling intimidated at that moment, heeded her request, and they went to a beautiful place, Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. The trip was a unique moment spent as a family. Frank was talking about the possibility of having another child, since he already had a way to provide for them and give them a good life with all the success he had achieved. So the votes said that they would have a new baby that year, but something strange happened. One day, Frank got sick and had to stay in the luxurious hotel room he had hired. Amelia left her son Santiago sleeping in his bed, and Amelia, in order not to miss the wonderful land of Rio, went out sightseeing. On the way, she made good friends and had a good time with the natives. The tour ended and everything returned to normal, but Frank changed his way of being. Already having a lot of money, he moved away from the business and left people in charge of his administration. But Amelia was no longer the same. She spent more time locked up in a room than in the big house enjoying its facilities. One day, Frank came home from a walk with a child and left a letter from his wife that said, "Don't forget that I love you." Frank prepared a romantic dinner with candles and a nice decoration, but something incredible happened. Amelia never arrived. Frank searched desperately everywhere for her. He spent a lot of money on a search and rescue, but everything was in vain. It seemed as if she had been swallowed by the earth. Frank did not know what to do. He was desperate. They never called to ask for anything at all, and if they had, Frank would have no problem delivering everything they asked for. Frank blamed himself for everything that had happened and the desperation of his beloved wife, but he was so depressed that he did not even take a bath anymore, much less change. He spent money and even asked for tips in the street with his son. His neighbors repudiated him and even wanted to remove him from the apartment building where they lived, but they couldn't. One day, Frank was walking through the center of the city, and out of nowhere, he began to complain of hunger. But Frank was begging for food and ignored him. Very sad and looking at the sky, Santiago found a cell phone when he was kicking the thick sand of the place. He could not believe what he had found. Immediately, he unlocked it, and when he opened it, he could not believe what he was looking at. There were pictures of his mother who disappeared one day more than 6 years ago. Of course, at that moment, he recognized her by the many pictures that his father broke daily to get the guilt out of his head. At that moment, he showed the cell phone to his father, and he could not believe it. It was her, but Amelia, At that moment, without thinking twice, he called the police and told them the story and ordered them to look for that woman immediately. The police traced the phone and told Frank that it belonged to a mother who was on vacation in that place and that they would give it to her. Frank followed them, and when he saw Amelia, he started to run to hug her. But when she noticed that Frank was looking at her, he also noticed that there was a child near him. At that moment, she started to cry on the floor and asked for forgiveness repeatedly. Forgiveness, because as she touched her son and cried with emotion. Then Amelia stood up and told him the truth of the story. When they were in Rio de Janeiro, she went out with some friends, and while he took care of the child because he was very sick, on that day, she slept with the native of the area. It is then that days later she noticed and discovered that she was pregnant. Of course, she did not want to betray Frank by giving him a child that was not his, and lest that people speak ill of her. Then she made the decision to go to Brazil again and give birth there. After giving birth to the child and returning to her country, she had so much love for him that it was impossible to tear him away from her life. So she stayed 6 years and had planned to return to see her son. Frank cried when he saw her and shared all he had gone through. He felt so guilty that he became very sad and wandered the streets like he was lost. "Well, I loved you," he told her. Amelia said that if he accepted her despite her mistakes, they could have their old life back because she still loved him and wanted their family reunited. This was hard for Frank, but he tried for the sake of their son. He forgave his wife and also welcomed her other child, as the father of the child had left them a long time ago. He felt sorry for that child and for Amelia, who had been his friend and wife for a long time. Gradually, Frank fell in love with her again when he saw how good a mother she was and how she cared for her children, even when they caused trouble. Today, they are working on mending their relationship and go out on dates. Frank has a big heart, and by accepting the other child, he gives him his last name. What do you think about this story? Please let us know in the comments. Thank you.